Hello, dear friends. Take this fantasy as an allegory of multiple interpretations. Fantasy literature often reflects humankind's society in a symbolic way, and therefore has great wisdom. Opinion piece. Orc Stew. Food for geeks. For freakies. Middle-earth gastronomy. One ring to rule them all. Orc Stew is a video game. Tough road to Mount Doom. Frodo went hungrier than the blind man's dog. Predictions about the bend and the great solar flare. Energy tide has turned around the world. Silver price rises as dollar drops. Funds to fight hunger in Africa's Sahel region. Ascent process will continue to accelerate through 2023. Let's start. It's lately hot this spring, with temperatures as high as 50 degrees Celsius in some countries, such as Pakistan, that have again triggered a health alert. It is still spring and temperatures are 10 to 15 degrees above average for this time of year, with thermometers reaching 38 to 40 degrees in some areas. They say there are pressure cooking gas in a pressure cooker, like cheap pigs, to make us tender. Others say they are making an orc stew, an expression that became fashionable in the 90s, when people started talking about Nisera in the US, which later became Gisera worldwide. So much so that a video game called Orc Stew later came out. Orc meat is tougher and tougher than old cow steak, no matter how much it is cooked, and it also contains many toxins, so its ingestion is not recommended unless you are very hungry. In Tolkien's world, there is a hobbit recipe for survival, Orc Stew, a unique and complete dish to endure the journey to Mordor. The ring is worn with pain and regret, and at times it seems to drive us mad. It can even make us uncomfortable with our friends because it is an earthly path strewn with thorns. Hunger. Frodo Baggins and Samwise Sam Gamgee head to Mordor to destroy the dreaded ring. Guided by Gollum, they go hungrier than the blind man's dog, all day up and down the swamp, until Sam decides to ask Gollum Smeagol to hunt something for dinner. With a couple of rabbits, water, salt, turnips, carrots, and aromatic herbs he finds around, bay, thyme, and sage, Sam makes a comforting stew that gives Frodo strength to continue on the road to Mount Doom. In the Spanish Tolkien Society's magazine Estel, an Elvish word meaning hope, you can find two other versions of rabbit stew, one hobbit and one dwarven. And if you are in a geek forces you to get a doctorate in Middle-earth gastronomy, you can use the Middle-earth recipes. You can accompany the meal with Harry Potter butter beer. Among these recipes are baked bluefish for Gollum, Bilbo's tea cake, breakfast buns for Mr. Frodo, Elvish bread, Erebor fruit cake, Hobbit porridge, Middle-earth snacks, Gandalf-style mushrooms, Aragorn's tea, Eleanor's cider, Sauron's eye cookies, baked bluefish for Gollum, roast lamb for the trolls, or Bilbo's orange marmalade. Freaky or freak, meaning strange, extravagant, or outlandish, is a colloquial term used to refer to a differentiated person whose hobbies, behavior, or clothing are unusual. The set of minority hobbies of the geeks is called freakism or geek culture. It also refers to any person who practices a hobby excessively. The Lord of the Rings. Professor Tolkien felt a fascination for the Gothic language from a young age that led him to conceive of its study as a hobby. The hobby prompted Tolkien to begin what would become his most famous work, The Lord of the Rings, an epic fantasy novel subdivided into 3 volumes and published between 1954 and 1955. Tolkien invested more than 10 years in the creation of the story and the novel's appendices. The Lord of the Rings became tremendously popular in the 60s and has remained so ever since, ranking as one of the most popular works of fiction of the 20th century. Its story takes place in the third sun age of Middle-earth, a fictional place populated by men and other anthropomorphic races such as hobbits, elves, or dwarves, as well as many other real and fantastic creatures. The novel narrates the journey of the main protagonist, Frodo Baggins, Hobbit of the Shire, to destroy the One Ring and the subsequent war that the enemy will provoke to recover it, since it is the main source of power of its creator, the Dark Lord Sauron. In quotes, 3 rings for the 11 kings under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords in stone houses, 9 for the mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord upon the Dark Throne in the Land of Mordor, where the shadows stretch, 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to find them, 1 ring to draw them all and bind them in darkness in the Land of Mordor, where the shadows stretch. Definition. Orc is the deformation of a term coming from Old English, which referred to numerous monsters of Celtic mythology. The existence of these creatures was invented to explain the events of blood and assaults that took place in the fields and forests. In English, the word has evolved as augury. In Roman mythology, the word orcus is synonymous with the underworld, and sometimes it is also the name of a giant, son of the god Pluto. The Spanish word, derived from Latin, is huerco. According to the Romans, it was the place where the dead went. Tolkien was the first to use the word orc to designate a specific type of humanoid being with an unpleasant appearance and aggressive attitude. This type of orc comes from the work The Hobbit, where Tolkien uses the word goblin or elf, and from The Lord of the Rings, where Tolkien already uses the word orc. They are anthropomorphic beings or monsters whose skin usually has greenish tones. Small orc is equal in height to a human being and is much broader and stronger in build. Their eyes have a reddish glow that glows in the dark. They possess a prominent lower jaw, and individuals of the species are often found with large, visible lower fangs, even with their mouths closed. Orc language is usually very poor, based mainly on grunts and deep voices. Orcs do not usually talk much. They are very unhygienic. Very dirty. They will eat any meat almost regardless of the condition of the meat. Some orcs are given to cannibalism, to eating the flesh of other orcs. They may also devour human flesh or the flesh of any enemy they defeat. Their camps are usually poor and chaotic, similar to those of primitive populations. They make simple weapons and tools. Orc tribes often gather and migrate in large hordes with the goal of engaging in warfare. They live to fight. They have little intelligence, but possess a certain kind of cunning. They are sullen in character, and by the sense of well-being of anyone who is able to feel that way, and hate the elves above all things, as they blame them for the orc way of life. This is the reason why they are mostly diabolical. The smaller relatives of the orcs, the goblins, smaller in size than the orcs, follow them, always eager to serve them and to profit from their spoils. They are often allied with the equally brutish creatures such as ogres, trolls, and giants. Occasionally, they often have some malformation in their bodies, such as Marin's fantastic fang. Despite their savage and violent nature, orcs always work in teams, and it is almost impossible to see an orc traveling or fighting alone. According to the Encyclopedia of Magical Beings, orcs, like goblins, are a race related to the Homogopalis, or goblin, famous for their stupidity and immorality, and for their depraved appetites. These attributes place them among the most unpleasant hominids in mythology. Society. The orc society is structured in clans or tribes, being always the strongest member of all the one who governs such clan, the tribal chief, guided by shamans. Brute force is always the decisive factor in matter of dispute, which, together with the territorial nature of this, is often the reason for frequent clashes between rival orc tribes, or with globinoid tribes, which often share the same hunting grounds. Given their sullen and bellicose nature, they often raid and treat humankind with cruelty, or fight for the occupation of another area owned by another clan. Due to their strong constitution, the vast majority of orcs are formidable warriors, with a superhuman resistance to pain, who, through the use of mostly rudimentary weapons and the use of crude armor, and based on group attacks, are capable of moving down those who dare to stand up to them. However, they have an aversion to the sun, so their attacks are usually nocturnal. The lack of intelligence is one of their most notorious qualities, which makes them become warriors, or more commonly, barbarians, since not all of them can assimilate the combat technique and discipline of a warrior, although they try to make up for this deficiency with an incredible ferocity. Nevertheless, it is common for each tribe to have some shaman with knowledge of magic, invoking the power of their brutal gods. Their low intelligence makes it easy for other races to trick them and take advantage of them. It is easy to manipulate them, especially by promising them benefits. But if they discover that they have been tricked or swindled, the manipulators may be felled for death. Economy. First, the price of silver rises as the dollar falls. Second, ruble hits 5-year high as gas buyers pay in rubles. Third, Finland loses main gas supply after refusal to pay in rubles. Fourth, Turkish reserves lost $4.8 billion in just 1 week. 5. The United Nations announces more funds to fight hunger in the Sahel region of Africa. 6. Electric air cabs will provide another option for getting around the city. Americas. US reaches out to Cuba and Venezuela to save the summit of the Americas. Second, US authorizes for the first time an investment in a private business in Cuba. Third, Venezuelan activists asked to the United Nations to release political prisoners. Fourth, Costa Rica's First Lady resigns for her position at the World Bank. 5. Argentina has a population of more than 47 million people, according to a recent census. Predictions. Predictions about the Arcturian Council 9D event and solar flare by Daniel Scranton. We know there are many predictions about what must happen before you can change your consciousness, but this change has never been about external factors. It has never been about what the sun does or what the planets do in your solar system and beyond. It has always been an inner game, an inside job, and therefore each of you can choose what comes next on your individual path and what you want to experience as part of humankind collective. The reason you don't need to pay attention to the predictions about an event or solar flash is because there is no future, and there is not just one Earth and one human collective. There are more than you can imagine, and you can align with whichever one seems best to you. You do not have to wait in anxious anticipation for what some higher dimensional being or collective says is going to happen, so that you can decide when it is necessary to stock up on supplies or build a shelter beneath the surface of the planet. You are the ones who choose the destiny of yourselves as individuals, and you are consciously or unconsciously choosing which version of the humankind collective you are going to join on your ascension journey. This is why we always advise all of you to stop looking outside of yourselves, and we always remind you that everything is within you. Most importantly, your vibration is within you. It is the part of you that tells you what you are aligning with. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.